mind is with the with the State Street Bridge, it's a narrow enough street that we have lighting, one set of lighting on each side of the bridge. Do we want to double up on that and on each side of the bridge have two rows of lighting, or do we think that a single row of lighting will be sufficient?
Are we talking underneath the bridge?
Underneath the bridge.
Okay, but
Yes.
what about the issue of, how does the issue of what we have for walls? Right now, we've got an angled wall on one side, and I'm not sure on the other side. I think it goes looking into downtown on the left-hand side, and I assume it goes down to grade, or maybe a shallow vertical structure. What are we gonna, how are we gonna address that issue? Because that may affect the amount of lighting that you have, that's all.
Yeah, I think we should be going with the vertical, like we had discussed on the other ones, a vertical abutment with the textured stone look. I think the horizontal, to me, or the sloped look, gives it more of a suburban look. And this being plain concrete is really asking it to be graffitied. I think you're just going to have maintenance issues with it.
Yeah,
so to me, I would think that the best way to go was a vertical stone face. Go ahead, Ted.
I agree with the vertical. I'm thinking that a plain concrete face would provide opportunity for public art to be put there. Which would be a different.
This is Chris Trail with ADC. I just wanted to agree with Ted, and I'd hate to lose the opportunity for public art opportunities underneath that bridge. I know it makes a huge difference on the Lexington Ave bridge, and I think it would really it provides an incredible opportunity here as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I think one of the differences between this bridge and the interstate bridge is this is going to be more local traffic. And so opportunities for something like wall art is maybe a little bit more appropriate in an urban setting like this than it might be when we're trying to make maybe a different kind of a statement on the interstate as you come into town.
That's a very good point.
So
just from a standpoint, I guess the ask there is for the sloped abutment to be replaced with a vertical abutment with a unstained face for potential art.
Yeah.
And on the left-hand side coming into town, is there a wall there, or is it just go down to grade?
It goes down ultimately to Smithville Creek.
Okay.
So all of that is open.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So your question was about the lighting, though, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but I agree with Ken that this is interconnected with how that passage is going to be, and so I sort of want to go on to the next item, which we've sort of already moved to with Mike's suggestion, and then move back to the pedestrian lighting. On the multi-use path side, and I think on the sidewalk side too, I'll call it the inner side of the pathway, there are pillars that are supporting the bridge, and so you've got opening from the multi-use path and I think the sidewalk too, to see and hear that traffic, that's that vehicle traffic that's going under the bridge. And so one question in my mind is, do we want to recommend that the space in between those pillars be closed off with with basically a thin as practical sheet of concrete, again providing opportunity for public light, for public art, and also separating more the pedestrian bike from the vehicular traffic. I'm wondering whether that's desirable or whether it would produce a too closed-in feeling.
I could see some advantages aesthetically in doing that, but this may be because I'm a woman. I immediately think dark tunnel,
Yeah, right.
and that doesn't feel right to me. So that is a concern.
Yeah, I agree with Lynn. It cuts down the visibility of the people. So with them open, anything that's happening on the pathway can be seen easily by vehicles. With that closed off, you lose that visibility, and that could be a concern for people walking and safety.
Yeah, well, I think we'll also get a little bit more efficiency in the lighting. Some of that lighting will spread.
Yeah.
You know, you've got really three portals here. You've got the right portal, the center portal, and the left portal. The right portal is going to be the multi-use path. The center portal is traffic. The left portal is, I guess, a sidewalk and whatever's left over, green space, I guess. I don't know. So if you put some of that lighting, if you don't have any obstructions to the lighting from the center portal, it'll bleed over into the others, which means you get better lighting under those areas for security, I think.
So with that, would we like maybe not need a 2 rows of lights on each side, but just a row
I
of
think
lights?
that's the lighting guys are going to
I
tell
do
us.
too. The
Yeah.
lighting engineers
Uh-huh.
have to determine that. I think
Okay.
we want adequate lighting. We don't want a lot of spillage where we can avoid it. And going back to Mike's point about the high mast, being close to the East West Asheville neighborhood and the other side of the street, I think we need to minimize the light spillage that's created by this.
Yeah, I understand that MUP itself has lights on posts all along it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And those lights on posts would
Yeah, that's a
continue
good
under the
point.
bridge.
Right, yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So in addition to the
Right,
lights
yeah,
on
right.
posts, whatever their spacing is and whatever foot candles, on the MUP, is there also additional lighting attached to the bottom of the bridge to make it even safer and less scary when you're traveling 168 feet on the MUP under the bridge? Is there 2 types of lighting and not just the lighting on the posts?
Yeah, that's something that Michael, I think, was trying to find and see exactly what the lighting was under there. Hopefully he'll be able to get that and get that out to the
So
community.
anything
what he
stuck on
finds.
the bottom of the bridge would supplement
Right.
the posts, the post lighting. Okay, that's what I, they're like short.
Waist high or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that the post lighting would continue under the bridge.
I think so.
There,
Yes.
Would make sense. Extra useful there. So just to clarify, the post lighting that I think you're referring to is the lighting on the Bowen Bridge.
No,
No.
the lighting of the MUP itself. I heard there was lights all along the MUP. It's lit with post lighting, not high bay, not street
Does that
light,
sound
but
correct to you?
separate. Is
I
that
haven't
true?
heard that one.
no, I don't think that's
Oh, that's what I
correct.
thought I heard. There
Yeah.
was lighting
That
of the MUP
the lighting of the MUP will be from the street.
streets. Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I'm wrong. There is no lighting under the MUP. It has to be covered by additional lighting hanging from the bridge
Yeah, I guess.
or,
That's expected.
angled from the posts or something. That's what lighting designers would do.
But I think maybe that's up for more conversation.
It is. I think
Yeah.
the question really, and we'll
It could
confirm
be an
as Mike's
addition.
looking for the lighting plan, and potentially next week at our meeting with this conversation, we'll have our DOT lighting folks with a mock-up. But I think the question really to the committee is, do you want to see both? Do you want to see? It's definitely feasible that they can go under. We'll confirm that they do or don't. But do you want them under? Do you want it on the bridge? Do you want both of those?
I'm only speaking of that scary thing that you.
Yeah.
Sure, and
and
that's what I'm talking
That's
about.
your
Do you-
safety
Well,
and
and also,
security.
it's not just the lighting, it's the feel of it too.
Sure.
So it has more of a pedestrian feel and, a city street feel. It's going to feel better to go in rather than that dingy under bridge feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the street lighting will throw maybe 6-foot candles, 8-foot candles onto the MUP. So that's pretty dim. So you want to put like 30 or 35-foot candles underneath the bridge so it's less scary.
Yeah, and if you have the attachments on the bridge piers facing the multi-use path,
Exactly.
then you don't have that kind of less than desirable look of these things hanging down from the underside of the bridge, and that light is facing down on those people using the
Surface mounted.
Yeah. Right.
And my memory could be wrong on that. So I defer, maybe Nathan, maybe you can check that.
I think what we can do is if from a committee standpoint, if you'd like to see both, if you want the pole lights to continue under the bridge in addition to lights on the bridge pointing back at the MUP, we could look at both of those things and then also confirm what we can pay for and what's originally included.
I think I was corrected. There are no pole lights. There's only the street.
Well,
lights.
I'm saying we can add them.
Oh, okay.
If that's whatever, that's the
yeah.
direction.
Visual feeling.
So from a evaluation standpoint, what you want us to look at is both of those things in combination.
Yes.
We might can do it separately too, and you can get a foot candle
Mhm.
difference between our line posts. So that's,
So I'd be like, say you might like it more from, the low side down than having something. right
Well, I mean,
beside the path.
$400,000 burned through that no time at all. So it's going to be a matter of what can we get, what can we achieve that we
Yeah.
want to achieve with the minimal cost.
Yeah, the lighting is not terribly expensive. It was to put those lights under the State Street was $18,000.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the maintenance of those lights and the power to. those
Right,
lights.
but just the upfront cost, right.
Other than lighting, which helps with security and safety and keeps it from making so scary, does this topic allow other things to improve safety and security, look and feel of women riding at dusk and classic issues going under that grid? Does this item allow you to think about police call buttons,
Yeah.
continuous cameras, and then my experience in Atlanta with the Silver Comet Trail, if any of you have ridden that, we had murders and rapes on it.
Right.
And they came back in with continuous camera coverage and police alarms, and suddenly the whole community was a little more comfortable. And that was after the fact, regrettably. Hopefully we'll do this before the fact, but it's something that I don't know if it's a topic we can do.
And I'm sorry, refresh me on
David
your
Dixon.
name.
David Dixon, right.
Do you have continuous cameras in any other bridges?
we do, and there are cameras that are installed for traffic purposes. When we have a system, that our GMC that helps monitor and helps first responders for accidents and those kind of things. Not to this level, and I don't think would be quite exactly what we're talking about. I think if that's something you want to pursue, if there's infrastructure costs associated with conduit and wiring and all that stuff, definitely something that we could look at including. But the system itself would have to be APDs.
Right, these are police cameras, so these are police security cameras.
Didn't the city look earlier, a couple years ago, about putting cameras at Pritchard Park, and there was a big backlash against having cameras in public spaces in Asheville?
It's definitely a topic that is not universally agreed upon. And I think the city did maybe 4 cameras in certain public spaces and tied it into the FUSIS system, which is a system we use with the sheriff's department. And it did move forward. But yeah, I think you're flagging a good point of just as folks are considering, this is a topic that some people feel really concerned about being surveyed by the government.
Well, this is less a big brother thing than security for people riding on it.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different.
The few is really.
Yeah,
You'll
you're
still hear
there
it,
to,
though.
Oh, I'm sure.
probably, but
And that's
you're,
why the discussion would have to go to the APD
Yeah.
and their experts on that, what they would feel good with doing. But like I said, we'd certainly be working with them on some of those things.
And that may not be something that has to be decided in this initial, that kind of conduit and infrastructure can be added later.
What other methods have you seen in your industry?
As far as,
So I think
the
like,
safety aspect,
yeah,
or
I think that
just,
there's like a safety aspect, but then my mind broadens to like placemaking for comfortability. And I know that can get really expensive, what have you, but I mean, now's the time to think about it before this thing's built. Like, is there some cool mural or a swing set or I don't know. I don't know, guys. I'm just trying to like play in the brainstorm space. Yeah, exactly. Like other.
You may have seen my underpass architecture. Turns out it's a thing around the world, and architects who specialize in it make that 168-foot tunnel a thing of beauty that you want to go to rather than just hold your breath and try to get through without getting killed. It's a thing.
Well, let's brainstorm a little, even though I know that there could be like someone was sending, maybe Mike Sewell, it was you and I talking about, like, anyone been to the Detroit airport where you go between tunnels and there's like this light show basically on the roof? Like, that's a cool thing. So I know, like, we're not necessarily blowing up the budget, but let's get a little creative to think about what a place would be, like a destination. A mural is very cool. And I think that's like base level placemaking. But what type of destination experience could be there? And that might be we brainstorm on it and come back, or we do some more homework. It also might not be a cost you would do, or maybe it would.
Well,
But it'd be a lot cooler if we turn this from being like a scary tunnel where we want police buttons to like this awesome place where everyone's taking selfies and you take your family. Birmingham, Alabama.
Left Portland's got a pretty significant
Base.
base underneath it.
sure, and just from whether it's this project or from a hardscape perspective, what you do, I mean, it ultimately goes all the way to Smith Mill Creek, which is a future planned greenway. That is another connection that could be made, all that.
And the bridge itself is quite high at that point, isn't it? There's quite a high space there.
20 first instruction, probably.
Yeah, so across Patton, it's 17.5 feet.
Uh-huh.
And then as you go down the hill, the 26th grade, stays up or on a consistent grade down. And obviously from there, it's just existing ground, so it varies. I will say from a standpoint of, and Mike or Jeremy or anybody from our DNK chime in with more accurate answers than I can give off the top of my head. And I was going to switch. But if you notice or remember, we talked about one of the major changes from the preliminary plans to Archer Wright's proposal was the grade across the French Broad River is significantly lower to the point that the bridge lands in a spot or two. Let's see if I can share my other screen again. Apologize. Let's go back to full screen. Rabbit hole. So when you look at this design, this is really the space we're talking about. So you see the Smith Mill Creek goes down, and when you get to this yellow is where we're hitting existing ground.
Yep.
There. Okay. So if you remember the old designs from early plans and even preliminary plans, it was one big giant bridge that skipped across all that stuff. We lowered it down enough that we're catching into existing ground. If you're looking from the Bowling Bridge out.
So do you have a sense of how many feet it is from the edge of the bridge to that point where it actually touches down? How long it stretches?
This length, Jerry, Mike, can y'all help me here?
Talking about the total bridge length for the one.
Not necessarily the total length, but we're looking at that area. If you're on Patton facing towards downtown, off to the left, how long is that bridge in that area in there?
You zoom in there, Nathan, you can see your station.
That one's about 55 to 60.
Yeah, right there to that hatched area.
It's about 400 feet, I think, until it hits the ground again.
Yeah, right, okay. I mean, obviously it keeps going down, so it's going to get lower and lower as you go, but
It's kind of a valley.
Yeah.
Smith Mill Creek in the bottom.
yeah, right. Okay.
I can't, my station is blurry, so.
That's
You
on
might not be
there.
able to use all of it, but
The numbers, the big numbers are 500 feet, Nathan.
okay. All right.
So you got 1,000, almost 2,000 feet there.
Cody's got a better view of it than I do. He's on his computer, but 1,900 feet.
Wow.
Wow.
To
From
the
where to
full
where?
valley.
From,
the creek.
from here
From the edge of Patton.
From right there to
to
the,
here.
to that.
That's
extra.
1900.
Wow. It's a long way.
There's a lot of space under there. Again, the grades in there are gonna vary from
Have to crawl through the last
existing.
part.
I think you got a profile under the bridge.
Drop sharply down to the
Yeah,
creek,
right, yeah, I was
and
gonna
then
say,
rises
yeah.
sharply back up.
I don't know, yeah, see, I don't know what the ground's doing
Yeah.
underneath it.
You can see the stream, which
Yeah,
flows.
right, yeah,
It's
right.
a big drop.
Right,
down to
okay,
that.
so really you've only got about over that, yeah.
So the majority of the space occupied by the Racket Club.
Yeah.
That's the area that we're talking about. So you can kind of get it's a pretty big valley in there.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
and that's really what you're going across. So
Right.
give you a sense of height, but it'll get
Mhm.
pretty tall underneath there in the middle, and then
That's
Shoulders
yeah,
go.
right, that's, you know, about the ground underneath it, yeah.
Are the thinner red lines on the north side of the ramps and the south side of the ramps, is that the DOT right of way?
yes.
Okay, so everything between there remains in DOT right of way,
Correct.
but it is maybe somewhat open to.
Correct, and that's been something that we've discussed. There, the potential that I mean, from a DOT standpoint, we'll have to maintain the ability to access and maintain the bridge and the piers. But as far as future land use within the right of way, there are options for agreements with the city.
Do you have guidelines for that?
There is a policy for that. The policy even allows third-party agreements, but those agreements have to be with the city, not with us. Meaning, we would agree with the city, and the city might come to agreement with the developers.
So ideally, an urban forest might work there. The only concern I would think would be to make sure that it doesn't become encampments for homeless, because that's a big area that's well sheltered.
What's in the plan to avoid it becoming an encampment?
I think, and that sort of goes down to,
Yes.
yeah,
you gotta avoid-
goes down to another,
Yeah, we can jump to it later.
yeah.
Sorry.
but we can jump there.
Yeah, sorry.
I would, I mean, I would say that fencing is probably maybe only way to keep people from,
Not effective. Sorry.
no,
No.
This is
No.
what has been done. I don't know.
We could potentially look at some kind of activation. I mean, there's also the stream that goes through there, so you don't wanna cut that off for the critters and whatnot. But maybe there's some recreational use. Lucy really wants to put in pickleball courts and a pump track. Just kidding.
And a funicular. That's not.
Yeah. So,
Hillary?
Think about stuff like,
We're thinking about
I
it,
think
but
that's a good idea.
the entire project has to be closed out before remnant projects.
Correct.
is it
So-
remnant
It's
that's
years
underground
from now.
or under the bridge?
Well, these would not be, these would be right of way,
So,
Is that rule?
because
It's
it's
gonna take
It's
us
still
5
right.
years
part
to
of
build
the
anything.
roadway.
well,
I mean,
here's
it's
the
not-
answer to
not
that would be,
leftover.
in order for us to enter an agreement, we have to be finished in the bridge build. And partly because we need that space for construction. But that doesn't mean we can't work out the framework of what it's gonna be, so that as soon as we're done, the planning of it can concur. We can,
Correct, because this is not the city or the state turning over the land to the city. The state would still own the land. There would just be an agreement for the usage of the land. So
correct.
we wouldn't have to wait till the whole thing is completed. And I think Lucy is absolutely correct. Activating the area is a much better way to keep camping away, because I've worked on projects where we put in fences, then we put in steel bars, and then they dug underneath the steel bars, and we put concrete walls underneath the steel bars. Fencing doesn't seem to really work. I think activation is definitely the more successful and practical way.
The skate park is an example of a use that's under agreement with DOT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, our skate park?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I may not be right, but it's 7 acres under roof. Under that bridge.
Farmer
7
park?
acres, yeah.
That's just the
As long
part
as
that's
That's
Under
just
the
the part that's under the
bridge.
bridge, 7 acres.
Now, the thing to remember is the access to there too is gonna be correct. I mean, you're not gonna have like, parking that you can go. So that's the other thing you have to think about. It have to be something you can walk or bike to.
Mm-hmm.
Could we put a parking lot underneath the bridge?
We'd have to figure.
Well, you've got an issue with those, I mean, it's basically, interchange for the interstate. And so you've got that traffic coming off both areas, and it's gonna be pretty busy through there as it is. So introducing something else that would try to bring traffic would be a safety concern on that aspect.
Makes sense.
Salvage station.
Oh my gosh. I like pickleball courts.
Now there's
Where else to put them?
potential to work out something with the Crown Plaza where they've got some of their parking down there at the bottom to access something from there.
Yeah,
This
I
is a
think
big
if-
idea.
yeah.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
this,
good.
and again, like they said, there's time for city and
Mhm.
interested
Yeah.
groups to look through that aspect.
And this is all.
And you got to remember too
different because this is going to be underground.
that this isn't just.
Right. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, you got to remember too that this isn't just a flat space. I mean, you're looking at something like that.
Yeah.
And that major section right there we're talking about, if you look just north of it, there's a smaller red piece, so the
Uh-huh.
yellow's all land. So the
Okay.
only access you get from at least north of that page is under that bridge, which is over a creek. Correct.
Yeah.
So there's really no access from that top side to it,
Right.
at least in these drawings.
Yeah. I mean, but we are building a bunch of roads, so if we came up with some really rad idea, we could build another road.
Sure, we would
It's
look at
pretty
that. I
late
think
to
the
figure
main,
that out,
the main thing would be, it would have to be not like the road that you see on top there is the ramp. So I think if you were gonna do an access to a parking lot, we wouldn't necessarily want to tie it into the interstate.
Yeah,
outside
right,
ramp.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you'd be looking at
Some
Resort
football
Drive
fields,
or down from Cliff Street, but you'd have to get underneath. But that's something you could pursue.
Would you say 7 acres?
Let's see if I did the calculation. That's all the way from when it goes, when it hits the ground, but still, it's a big number.
That's kind of exciting as an opportunity. But a major unplanned, that's very, I'm surprised we haven't heard the citizens who are concerned about this bridge bring that part up. They've been talking
I've
about,
heard some.
Well, and that space was there really in the under design as well. It just was not adjacent to Patton. If that makes sense. Like if you have it that gully there, Smith Mill Creek, we were always crossing with the bridge.
Do you have a profile of that existing ground underneath that bridge?
Yeah,
There's one good rendering that kind of
Yeah,
shows. the
because
whole thing.
you're gonna be somewhat limited by the steepness of that river, of that stream bank.
Right. Because sure somebody's seen the racket club down there.
Oh, yeah, right.
Far below
Right.
where
Exactly.
the roadway it is, and that's where the stream is.
if I don't know if you're on the meeting and want to screen share, there's probably, or Mike can take the screen and show something. I can, but I was.
You want me to show the profile of the main line going over Patton and then over Smith Mill? Is that what you're wanting?
Yes, that's what I was going to, but I'll stop sharing because you've got it probably in a better format than I do.
All right, let me figure out how to share my screen here. Hold on.
I'm thinking, even if it weren't an extremely heavy use, just declaring it to be a park would I mean, city ordinance against encampments in parks would take effect.
Well, and
I think it's just a lot more complex than that. I mean, we have encampments in current parks. It's really about activation and programming.
Mhm.
So we have plenty of land that is called a park, that has ordinances, that has police
Mm.
stopping by. The problem is that people don't have somewhere to live and they're looking for somewhere safe out of sight. That's,
Yeah.
and so creating a new space that they can get to and be.
Well, probably it's not a new space. Honestly, there's probably already camping in some of those areas anyways. We
Yeah,
Run into that, especially next to a stream like that.
yeah.
Up with tents and.
It's just a little more tucked away or
Mhm.
what have you.
Well, if I'm looking at
But I
these
do
numbers
think-
right, it's about
The big potential.
70
We
feet.
haven't acquired new space for parking.
yeah, how above
Drop down to the stream.
the Smithville Creek in the middle there, how tall is the bridge at that point?
At that spot there, you can see your elevation, I'm going to say 1980 right there. And then right above it would be what, 2060? So that'd be 60 plus to about 80 feet from there to the bottom of the creek right there.
Interesting.
I also would be curious from the city side of looking at how much that flooded and
Mhm.
FEMA backup projections, if this could become a massive water storage place. That would be very interesting. I don't even know how that would work, but understanding how much it did flood and its connectivity to the river system, if it could become a storage place of 7 acres, that would be massive for the community.
An interesting thought, because all this time I've been thinking our challenge is going to be what active uses are really going to be attractive in that location with all the noise overhead. It's not Sunday in the park picnic for sure. It'd be something like a track to run on or play pickleball possibly, but something like that, I think, if it could be engineered,
Yeah,
would be
like-
awesome.
Yeah.
And that would definitely turn into the city's world. Of
Yeah.
What are our resilience strategies?
Yeah, if you look
7
at,
contiguous acres, though, is a big opportunity. I feel like.
Well, and I don't
Don't
know.
take
And we
it, don't take, it. Don't run with that
He
number.
gave us the numbers. It's official.
But I did do
Yeah.
a rectangle, so.
Yeah, you're doing thoughtful work anyhow. I think there's a lot.
Greenville, South
It's a huge-
Carolina's
there
done
is,
some.
and I
Are we
think
way
from
outside of
a-
bounds of our conversation
bridges.
purpose?
I
think
think
it was
a little
below
bit, but
Okay.
only
All right.
because I don't think we're too far out, because this is definitely a conversation that needs to be had, and it can really continue beyond kind of the directive of the third week of June for this committee.
Yeah.
The long-term land use under the bridge is something that we can continue to hash out and look
Yeah.
at agreements and potential uses, and those don't necessarily have to be funded by this project. There are other ways we can do it, and that space will be there. I think the goal would be, for the committee standpoint, if you can have an idea of what direction or the potential land uses, it might steer you one direction or another on what you want to see from an aesthetics lighting about the road.
Yeah, and I think we rewind where we were starting was on Patton with them up in the sidewalk.
Sure.
What is activation at that space? And then it kind of led into this opportunity, but I still think it does warrant some more ideas around activation under the bridge directly at Patton. So it's not just safety buttons, which honestly kind of make me more scared. I don't, that's like, this is not a place. So I don't know what aesthetic conversations we could have, but I think that we should continue that conversation before we conclude this task force. Because if it's just lighting and a mural, or if those are the most creative ideas, we might be missing an opportunity.
Yeah. In question, or just, am I correct in assuming that we still have the 1.5% toward landscaping, and that money can be used for the landscaping in this whole area?
Correct.
Great.
That's right at about a little over $11 million.
Woo. I bet that'll go quicker than we think, though, huh?
It goes very
It
quick,
has to be spread out.
especially if you do any hardscape whatsoever.
Well, landscaping ties into security. You always look to avoid landscaping where ne'er-do-wells can hide and jump out at you while you're traveling under that bridge. So it's a small issue, but sometimes landscape architects don't think about security.
Yeah.
They think about plantings and species and et cetera.
Well, you have to think about the plans too, because most times when they do the design, it's, 7, 8 years. And then
Yes,
they
it
think
grows
you
up.
do- Then they think you do something different.
Mhm.
But, most people let them grow beyond 7, 8 years.
I just want to add the link between security, landscaping,
Yeah.
and safety and landscaping, because it's real.
We had some landscape architects do.
Really? Are you? I didn't. Mine just overspend. Mine just overspend the budget. But
So I think with the issue of the encampments and the use of the land that potentially is at risk for encampment, I think we turn that over to the city's planning department and to work with whatever, whether it's parks or whether it's stormwater, to
The future land use.
the future land, determine the future land use, right? Yeah. Mhm.
Is there any estimates or anything, concepts you want us to pull for the more immediate task for the 5-foot sidewalk, that side up by the road? So fencing, wall, whether it be superficial or not, separation of any kind. I know that's, and again, I just look at the bullet. I'm trying to keep track of what estimates and concepts we need to pull for next week on cost. Or do we think we just want to stay away from fencing?
I'm hearing stay away from fencing.
Okay.
Maybe we can come with more ideas to the next meeting, so if it's not between now and then, think a little bit more about what activation looks like.
Okay, anything else on bicycle pedestrian safety under the bridge or approaching the bridge? Any other ideas? Yep, Mike?
With something, even using the language of just like bicycle and pedestrian, because where we are in transportation, there's also light mobility,
Okay.
meaning like
Mhm.
one wheels and scooters, even like e-bikes and cargo bikes,
Yep.
things like that. So there's even more of a speed differential between the pedestrian and the user of some sort of e-mobility. And so thinking about ways to delineate the speed differentials, right? Like I know that, it happens at French Broad Park, or really good, even in the rad tip, when you had people on cargo bikes or whatever, the one wheels, who opted to use the greenway as opposed to the protected bike lane. That created a tremendous amount of user conflicts between like someone pushing their baby in a carriage or walking a dog and another person going at like 25 miles per hour. And so when you're thinking about these MUPs, I really want to encourage light mobility is here and it's only going to be moving faster.
So on the Bowen Bridge, if I remember correctly, in the aesthetics report, it talks about a differentiation between the pedestrian, like a pedestrian zone and a, so maybe something like that.
So on it's the, Mike or Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the eastbound Bowen Bridge is the one with the,
okay.
basically a cycle track on it, the opposing bike lane.
Yeah.
So that ties into the 14-foot multi-use path that goes under the bridge. So if that's something, currently there is space with where the abutment is to do something wider than 14 feet. If you want us to look at estimates to that, I think the question becomes there: when do you terminate that and go back to just the MUP? Currently, it's just across the Bowen Bridges. If you extend it further to underneath the Patton Bridges, where do you stop? I guess it would be a question that
Never
we
stop.
need to know.
Just keep going.
something I mean, if that's, I guess that goes back to activation of space, but that we're back to the other side of the road from the Mills or Smith Mill Creek side. That's back with the mural, but even with the vertical abutment, there is space over there for something wider than 14 feet or potentially to continue the cycle track in that.
How much space?
Do you know,
Ballpark.
How much space in the above?
mhm. Especially if you went vertical, so about up to it's pretty 100 feet. Well, I think we're getting this, or I'll look at it now.
Yeah, you would almost have to like include the whole area from the West Patton Avenue Bridge to the Bowen Bridge, or you'd have like, you know, you're expanding it underneath the bridge, but then narrowing it and then expanding it
And
again.
we'd have to evaluate. I think the difficult part will be what he's got on the screen right there. To get much wider, because what you have there is the cyclists coming there and the MUP that are both on the bridge combining into one 14-foot MUP. But you got the space for under the bridge. We'd have to evaluate the connection there.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that unless you can do it continuously from the West Patton Avenue Bridge to link to the Bowen Bridge, it would be very awkward.
Can I just, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of this like light mobility, I mean, people do understand that you are going to get into like a neck down point, a place of congestion where you have like pedestrians and cyclists and carriages, like they all come in. And so it's kind of just a matter of like designing for that, you know, where it's like, okay, now you can open up if your fast traffic goes this way, slower traffic goes here. And when they converge, you know, you enter into like a pedestrian priority zone and you let the faster mobilities know that they have to slow down. That exists in other cities.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. But we're talking, if it were just underneath the bridge, we're only talking about 168 feet of expanded.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, if the committee, if one of the things you want us to investigate is the length that we could do that with the space available, we can look at that. There may be, to Mike's point, some points where it gets skinny.
Yeah.
okay. What are we doing on time? We're pretty good. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to traffic-facing bridge aesthetic improvements. So, you know, as we're approaching the bridge, do we want to do anything to change the visuals from what's being proposed now?
Approaching the I-26 bridge or the Bowen Bridge?
The West Avenue, the new West
I-26
Avenue
bridge
bridge.
over Patton.
Right,
Okay.
over Patton, right.
Can we call up this?
Yeah. Let me get the screen shared again. And I'll jump up to get it going.
So Ted, what I'm thinking about is what are the elements we want to look at? I mean, there's there's the bridge abutments and the bridge piers.
Right.
We talked about the bridge abutments
Mhm.
and the desire to, at least on the what would be the right-hand portal, making that a vertical instead of a
Right.
45-degree angle. The other thing that is the issue of the bridge fascia that we're looking at, both the concrete top as well as the steel girder itself,
Mhm.
and then whether or not we're talking about anything along the top of the bridge, like
Right.
yeah, right, any kind
Right.
of structure up
Yeah.
there. So there's
Yeah.
three or four different elements I
Yeah.
think we want to look at.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, the beams are concrete too,
Beams of concrete. Okay, all right.
which, and just for context, the aesthetics that they've applied to it is really just from the baseline guidelines. So
Okay.
no implication to this other than that's just kind of a start.
And is this the color palette that you expect would be?
Yes, and it comes from
Yeah.
the aesthetic
Yeah,
guidelines.
right, okay, yeah.
Of the committee, so including the logo and all that.
Color palette being whatever gray you wish.
Right, exactly.
Sorry,
Yeah,
the color palette
sure,
kind of
right.
threw me.
Yeah, all right, okay, all right,
As long as it's
It's,
gray.
it's brown.
Brown,
All of these are brown.
okay.
So it's
Sorry.
generally a paint and a coating.
Really?
Okay, so
Not just
on
as
that,
cast.
the logo part, I remember that discussion, but wasn't it just an embossed kind of thing, not a colored
Yeah,
thing?
right, yeah.
Or just remind me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, Ted?
Yeah, I'll pull that up.
The
The medallions were.
The medallions,
pressed
right,
concrete, I thought,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
right,
they
yeah,
weren't
right.
colored.
Stencil.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it was like a relief,
Yeah, that's what I
yeah.
thought.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't supposed to have a color to it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure maybe in that picture, just to show that it's there, it had to be a different color.
Did
It can be in whatever.
yeah, I thought we had chosen a color for it.
I think the blue came from the final rendering, but
Yeah, yeah.
this is the,
I don't remember. Blue. Yeah.
No, I don't remember blue.
Did you say?
Because there was a discussion about the city's use of the blue for, the sort of the Asheville blue. And we were thinking on the medallion, it would be some, stylized representation.
We ever settle on we actually ever, oh, excuse me, sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. We actually ever settle on the medallion, or was it, that was just a placeholder until somebody was gonna come in with this contest to see who could come up with the best medallion, or was that pretty much what we decided? I'm trying to remember now.
I think that that was our
Okay,
preference.
all right,
that-
okay, that's what.
yeah.
All right, okay.
I think we need to revisit that.
Yeah, I don't mind it being blue as
Yeah.
long as it's recessed and, a subdued blue. But I
Mhm.
think it's fine recessed with a blue coloring. Is there for the top section of the horizontal railing that goes across, as you were showing that was concrete, is there any standard, is there a choice of standard reliefs that we could see that you might have, like rectangles or chevrons or something that it's a standard or a selection that we might be able to look at?
You're talking about for the railing for the,
Yeah, if you go back to where we saw the elevation of the bridge just a second ago.
for this
Right
railing.
there, yeah. Is there some standard relief ribbons that we could look at? Maybe chevrons, which is one of the standard symbols for the city, or rectangles. Is there a book of standards that we could choose from, or is it just wide open, or nothing? Or
There may be some potential there. We can do some investigation before next week. I think there's a difference here to keep in mind with the traffic that's on this structure versus the railing that we looked at Hillcrest and Haywood that's handling local traffic. So we're up against interstate standards.
Right. I'm not suggesting changing the railing out to a metal railing or anything, but on the railing that's shown right there, can we have a relief that has some texture on it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not talking about changing the structure of that railing. I understand that that's based on the speed of the traffic above it, but is there something we could put on the face to make that a little bit more interesting and make reduce the thickness of it, the visual thickness of it?
There's form liners and architectural treatment are definitely viable options. I mean, locally, I know we've done stacked rock. There's an ashlar type pattern that's more stone laid, and there's other options as well. We can come up from a cost perspective, those are probably all the same. So I think the question is, we can present some options of potential film liners to the committee.
Yeah.
I think cost is probably going to be pretty similar. How far would you like that to go with the bridge being?
Well, we talked before that we didn't really want the stacked rock, but something, like maybe chevrons or something, just, stamped into it, or some other design, just to give a relief, and help again to reduce the apparent thickness of it. So I don't know if we need colors or anything. What is the risk the committee feel?
Are you talking, Mike, are you talking just the railing on top of the bridge, or are you talking about applying that to like the supports and the abutments, or would the supports and abutments be, would we want that to be stacked stone?
That's up to the whole committee. I know that we talked before about doing the stacked stone for the columns because that makes sense. They're in compression. And at the other locations, we were told we could not have stacked stone because they were circular and the form work would not allow for it. But in this case, it looks like these sections are rectangular, so stacked stone would be an opportunity or a possibility for at this location. The columns on each side of the Patton Avenue, and that's something that maybe we should discuss.
Yeah, I would like to see the stacked stone treatment, like similar to what we have on the interstate, on bridges crossing the interstate. Basically the same standard, the same elements that we have stacked stone on those bridges be transferred to this bridge.
That would make sense, and I would assume that the NCDOT would cover that cost.
We hope.
From a form liner perspective, yeah, we would. I think we'll evaluate into the conversation about, because where the drill shafts are, columns, but I think where we can apply it from a feasibility from construction is we'll verify that, but from a cost perspective, we would cover the form liner.
And then if we did that, then would it make sense for the beam to be stained just a brown?
Yeah, which is what I think is shown here, but that.
It looks like gray to me.
I think it's talking about the cap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the dog in the manger here.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, the stacked stone look on the interstate, I think is exactly what we need. But this is gonna be a little bit different because it's an urban corridor.
Correct.
There may be an opportunity for us to do something a little bit more, trying to find the right word here.
More like a stacked brick, something more industrial, more.
There's a might look at, it would be a sort of a different style, particularly about what we've done on the Bowen Bridge, and whether this could be something that could complement what we've done on the Bowen Bridge instead of just being kind of the same thing we did on the interstate. That's all.
Right.
We pull some options for
Yeah,
monitors.
I think it'd be worth looking at. That's all. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
From a cost perspective, I mean, unless there are some, but I think generally that's probably going to be in line.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we can run some estimates.
Okay.
Can I see the other side of the street real quick?
All right.
East side is,
Yeah.
you're looking.
So I just want to point out that, our conversation has largely been that I think is your high risk encampment area right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be a great public market.
The problem is really going to be, if you look at what's going on, if you go into the Sam's Club right now, there's an empty lot on the right-hand side, and on the back side of that, going down to the creek, you got people living there already. So it's the part of this area where it's going to go down into the creek that I think, because those people want to be they don't want to be where they can be seen. They want to be someplace where they can be private. So I think it's the backside towards the creek going to be the issue about how do you keep people out of there, not necessarily what we're seeing here on the left portal.
I will tell you, it drops off very quickly.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Up there.
That's where people are going to want to camp out.
That's where you're gonna have the 65, 70 feet elevation
right.
difference from
Yeah.
there to
They'll
the
just get over the
Bottom.
edge, get out of sight, the line of sight, and that's where they'll probably camp out.
well, they're probably, like I was telling her, they're probably camping down next to the creek now.
Or
anyway,
yeah, right. That's true. Yeah.
because that slope's so steep coming off, it's when it levels out next to the streams.
And if it's out of sight, is it less of a problem?
Well, if you look at what's happening in that parking lot, in that lot as you go into Sam's Club on the right-hand side, right along the edge, there's a lot of stuff.
A lot of
living
people
there.
down.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, I think if we could look at a couple of some ideas on what we could do with those columns, it might be a little bit different than just what we did on the interstate. Something maybe a little bit more artistic.
Those columns are round. Those columns are actually round.
Oh, they're round. Okay,
Yeah, they're
right.
round
Okay.
stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Those columns are actually gonna be a circle.
yeah, that's a little bit more of a challenge than yeah.
Hmm.
Changes.
Now, we have done similar stuff on the I-26 project where we stamped
Yeah.
the square part that's holding up the beams.
Yeah,
And
right, yeah.
the barrier
All right.
wall as well, so.
Okay. All right.
What they're saying is doable.
I think we'll evaluate where we can apply form liners feasibly and give
Okay.
you some options for what
Okay.
those look like.
But if you have some examples of what we used on 26, you can look at.
Yeah, sure.
Just, and again, from I guess, same conversation we're talking, you'd like to see vertical here, but no form liner there, you want a
Yeah.
mural.
Yeah.
Right, or some
Right.
sort
Do you
of.
want to see this, is there any, and my mind goes to out here where the mural is on the columns themselves and you got to stand at the right angle and see. Here at Merriman.
Yeah. Right.
So
Well, once you do that flat concrete surface, you've got to do something with that because you can't. It'll be art in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it'll be art.
It'll be art. You
But I
know what
just-
you want, but you'll get it. So, yeah.
we'll run the estimates on form lines. I just brought that up just because it's in my mind because it's right here.
And when we're going to the vertical abutment, that will create a sort of that will create facing space that also could be whatever form liner we decide on.
It could be a form liner, or it could be a mural. That's where
Yeah,
I think
okay.
that's my
Yeah.
question is what sections of this are you
Right.
thinking mural and what sections are you thinking texture?
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing now is a vertical face abutment, smooth for potential art, and the rest looking form liners. Okay.
Yeah, one thing with the making space for public art is that we really need the commitment from the city that they will turn it into public art, because that's under the city's control, that you have some sort of public art.
We have
Oh.
a process.
Yeah,
At the
right,
city to do it
yes.
through the Public Art Commission.
Yes, yes, yes. That needs to get activated so that as soon as things are ready to apply, they can be. So that's a timeline that needs to be figured out, because my impression is that the Public Art Commission can take some time.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd be
Yeah.
interested in, see, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, and I'm hoping that we can come up with some ideas about activation that aren't exclusively public art, that
Mhm.
are totally in the realm of what DOT builds and does. So I think it's either or. I think that we should be looking at those, like lighting, for example. You were saying to get like lighting ideas. Birmingham, Alabama has a rainbow tunnel. I'd like to see lighting figures for that idea. Right? Like that's cooler than just lighting ideas. That's the only thing I can come up with now, but like I'll go nerd out on my phone and look up some other things. But I think that there's things that go beyond a mural or a
Mhm.
statue that the city would participate in that are like maybe the shape of that ramp is texturized into a landscape of Blue Ridge Mountains.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
An example of that is there's a bridge in Morton that we built that's a vertical abutment, but it's instead of a smooth face, it's actually a mural carved in concrete of Teflon.
Right, sure. Yeah.
Like things like that. And so I feel like I'm putting out a big idea, but I know it's hard to be like, you're like, tell us what you like and then we can look into it. So I really hope that we can think about stuff like that, because
I do have a file of ideas.
that's great. So I think that's a conversation for the next agenda. That would be nice, because I do think the city's public art place is one place to look at it, but there's ways that we could blend and leverage the resources. If we're going to build a wall, can it be cooler? If we're going to have lighting, can it be about activation or other stuff as well?
Bike ramps. The other thing I'd be interested to find out is if there's any alternatives to the crash barrier along there, the guardrail.
Sure. Yeah.
Aesthetically.
Whether I don't know if you're thinking Corten, like the rusted look, or even just brown, or both. There are options for that.
Yeah, I guess just whatever options you like.
The starting point may be, if you want to look at what we've got other places of the project, I know we can look at applying those same standards.
One thing I want to bring up, hopefully to rule it out, would be my preference, is that I think, from my point of view, what we don't want to be looking at is some sort of visual landmark style structural component, sort of making this a landmark bridge similar to what's been done in Winston-Salem, because that just gets incredibly expensive.
No, I don't think that. I think that option's probably off the table, given what we're dealing with. What about along the top of the bridge? Do you think there's anything we ought to look at in terms of any kind of like what we did some of the other bridges? Any kind of a structural element that would be primarily aesthetic across the top? I don't know if there's money for that, but
I don't think so. Yeah, first of all, that does get costly, and right. Where we did it on other bridges, it was I'd say at least 60%, if not more, for the benefit of the pedestrians and bicyclists that were crossing the bridge.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than, it did have the effect of beautifying it for the oncoming traffic, but
And this isn't an aesthetics question, this is me just still catching up to the years of participation that you've all had. Are there sound walls up here on this bridge?
On the bridge, no. They are, there's a noise studies being completed, but they're at the outside of the ramps that come down. So we think about this like an interchange. The sound walls are up on the outside of the ramp. So inside the sound walls are encompassing the off ramp and the gore and the structure. So from a location standpoint. If I'm sharing my whole screen or one day, so I don't know if they switch with me.
This might be too far off agenda, so bring me back.
No, that's a,
It's the bullet right
that's
there.
on,
Next
So
point.
You're leading,
Yeah.
you're leading the witness. Good
I
job.
wonder how the decibel level compared to cicadas right now. It's what all the electric cars are gonna sound like.
Mike, are you still on? Did you have 25% pulled up a second ago? Did you show sound wall locations?
Oh, yeah, I can,
Uh,
they're probably best, maybe the hearing map. Let me, hold on one sec.
I was on the layered map and they're not on there.
They're not on the layered map. All right. And another good place is some of those renderings we did. That shot going back towards Haywood shows the walls. That's a good one to pull up. You know what I'm talking about?
Dude, I'm navigating there. If you beat me to it, feel free. But I'm working my way towards those now.
Me too. We'll race.
Oh, he's looking for that. Can I ask you another question? Sure. Is there any kind of a lip between the, on the interstate itself, going over Patton Avenue, is there any kind of a lip between the concrete barrier and the outside of that, the concrete truss goes in there? And the point I'm trying to get at is, if later on you wanted to add something to put some relief on that bridge, is there an area where it could be, let's say, a steel structure, some steel work or something? Is there an area where that could be bolted on, or would have to go in on the side of the bridge?
I think from a structural analysis, it'd have to be if it could support it. From a physical space standpoint, what you'll have is the interstate lanes, and then as a part of O&R, and I mentioned earlier, we reduced all our shoulders to the minimum possible, which is only 10 feet.
Yeah, okay, all right.
So you got 10 feet travel lane, and then that barrier.
Okay, but that's straight down, correct? Okay, there's no lip or anything there.
On the back side of the barrier,
But I mean,
it's not nothing.
Nothing
to-
like 2 feet.
No.
That's what I was trying to get at. Okay, fine.
Then when you get to the bottom of the deck, so you've got the barrier wall sitting on the concrete deck, but it's basically very small.
Okay, so it's straight down all the way.
Straight down.
Okay,
You get to
that's
the
what I
bottom
was
of the
trying
deck,
to
and then the deck has an overhang sticking out from that first girder.
Okay.
It projects out from the girder, but once you get to the edge of the deck, it's pretty much a straight line up to the top of that concrete.
Okay.
Nice question on the sound study. I mean, the normal semi is about 100 decibels of highway speed, maybe a little more. But engine braking, especially as they're coming off these ramps, you get about 200. Is that part of the noise analysis, or is there there's often prohibitions against engine braking? Has there been discussion on that particular topic?
As the noise analysis and our noise and air folks can speak in detail, but it's our policy is based off of increase, including regular traffic and all of that looks at, and what triggers the location of sound walls is based off that affected area. So it's just that increase of decibels.
Well, my assumption is they have that covered. It's just engine braking is a special topic. That's all I live nearby. All I ever hear is engine braking.
Well, I think the reality is that the traffic that, is triggering the noise wall would also cover that, the impact is the same. There's not we build an extra sound wall just for engine braking.
No, I'm actually more thinking of prohibiting engine braking.
That's ordinance related.
Yeah, that's
thing.
not DOT.
No,
that's
but
the-
well, this seems like the right group to ask the question.
Yeah, and I don't know
This
if they
is-
can do that on a.
I don't
this has come up before,
Has it?
and
Okay.
the issue is that in order to, and I think it might be statutory or at least regulatory, but to have for a locality to have an engine braking ordinance, they have to commit to enforcement. And enforcement becomes a huge issue. Yeah, I mean, just look at how well, in quotes, speeding is enforced in neighborhoods. And, you know, there's serious understaffing with APD to do enforcement. Now, if the city would break ADP into separate out traffic enforcement from criminal, that would be great in my mind.
We got legislation last year that allowed us to do basically traffic cops that are not sworn officers and don't have caps.
Yeah.
There's a whole training process that the state is establishing in order for municipalities to opt in. So we're looking at that.
Okay,
It still
good.
doesn't necessarily mean we'll
Yeah.
be able to hire a full force to do it, but yes, I think that's the thing. Yeah.
Well, having an ordinance and making it illegal to do engine braking within the city limits is a separate discussion from enforcing it. And at least it tells the truck driver not to do it.
Well,
Unless
but they
the permission to do the ordinance requires
Yeah,
commitment, which
right.
I'm surprised that the state requires that of us.
Really?
I have seen that sign recently, and I'm thinking it's up near Weaverville, no engine braking. And I
You
think
see
it's
that
the
sign?
first time I've seen the sign. I have to
I'll have to Weaverville.
draw that up in my memory. It may not be Weaverville, but it's somewhere up that way.
Being prohibited from passing unenforceable laws has never stopped us in the past.
I mean, we have speed limit signs, they're not always enforced, but
They're civic.
they can be enforced.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we look at the section on this thing, you forget that you may be looking at a parade of trucks going across the top of that. That's really going to affect what kind of the whole feel of that bridge.
Well, and we are gonna be having a lot more trucks, I believe,
It's I-26
because
in Charleston. Yeah, right.
it's straight through now. You don't have to go through Patton Avenue and make those.
Could it be
Um,
taller? The wall, could it be taller?
The sign.
Would you
want
wanna, like,
anyway, yeah.
Would you want to try to block that?
That would be correct.
Yeah.
If that's feasible.
Well, that's why I was asking about something across the top that
Yeah.
might not
Right.
Yeah, that's where I
completely
was
screen
going
it,
to
but at
sound
least
wall ideas.
Right.
you wouldn't be
Across
seeing
the
this.
bridge.
Yeah.
across the bridge. I don't know.
Cause it sounds like through the existing neighborhood, you're gonna have that wall.
He got it pulled up. I was working on visualizations, but the yellow
Explain
line,
this.
yeah, so the yellow line there is the proposed location.
Where are we?
So what you're looking at is the incoming. So the bottom of the screen
Uh-huh.
is kind of the West Asheville neighborhood. If you're trying to pick out a road name.
Luana.
Okay, I see, yeah.
Where are
Well, I mean,
where's the storage
river's
units?
here?
Yes,
Okay, cool. This is going east-west.
Is that Patton or is that the bridge?
that is 26. So
Bridge.
Oh,
immediately
okay.
to the right of this, you're approaching.
Pat.
Pat.
Okay,
Okay.
so as you get towards the bridge, the sound walls stop.
They follow out the ramps. So if you go to the next
Right,
sheet,
yeah,
Mike,
yeah.
so there's a break in the noise wall there for greenway access for the neighborhood. And as you go to the next page,
Yeah.
what it does is follows out the ramp to the noise wall. Here, running along the interstate, and then it picks up here again. So the bridge is there. You got the gore area, the ramp, and the walls are the outer edges by the adjacent to the top of the slopes.
On your last sheet, you showed the sound walls butted up against, right, exactly, along the freeway. And we discussed before if there's any possibility that we could have like a 4-foot gap between the pavement and the sound walls. so that when you're driving down, you don't have a wall, concrete and another wall. You at least have 4 foot to plant some shrubbery and some bushes and stuff just to soften that out. Exactly. You said that you reduced the paved shoulders, so the reduction in pavement should provide an area that we now can landscape.
So the area in there is the greenway.
Okay, so right now we have the concrete barrier and then the greenway.
Correct. If you zoom in a little bit, there is some space. There's a separation there. You can see there's a 14-foot dimension there in about the middle.
Right. So that concrete barrier, how tall is that concrete barrier between the traffic and the greenway?
That's like 4 feet.
That straddles the AC, that the CA straddles.
You said it's taking around 4 feet. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Typical Jersey barrier on the outside is about 4 feet.
But it's not, there's also a level of, and from a profile perspective, Mike, do you know for what portion of this the greenway, the MUP that runs this isn't necessarily always the same height as the road?
Right. And actually it's better if it's not the same height as the road.
And it, because it's under, from an ADA compliance standpoint. There are places that they run together.
In this area, Nathan, it's the same grade where you got the barrier. If you get onto your next sheet, you can see the MUP pulls away from the ramp in this area. So basically from here to here, it's a different grade elevation than the ramp.
And having the greenway separated from the ramp is much preferable than to be right up against the traffic, even with the concrete barrier. And in that section that you just highlighted, you have the entire 8 lanes of freeway, then a concrete shoulder, then a low concrete wall, and then you have the greenway, which is not a good name for it at this point because it's just concrete, and then a 16-ish foot concrete wall. Is there any way that we can either move the greenway up against the wall, the pathway up against the sound wall, and have 4 feet of planting area between the concrete barrier and the greenway? I'm just concerned that that's an awful lot of concrete walls and pathways without anything to soften it out visually or sound-wise.
Yeah, there are ADA compliant. There are minimum max slopes. Obviously, we need to adhere to that.
Right.
So we have done that in some areas, but in this area,
that's not what I'm talking about. If you go to this section right in there.
Right here?
Yeah,
yes. You got the noise wall, then you have your multi-use path, you have a barrier, you have your shoulder, then you have your through lanes. Yeah.
Is there any way we can get a strip of landscaping either between the multi-use path and the concrete barrier, or between the the multi-use path and the noise wall? And I would prefer between the concrete barrier and the multi-use path, just to give a more separation and to make that area softer in appearance. I know that you reduced the side of the roadway by several feet, so that should give us that amount of space to put the greenway in.
With the reduction of the roadway also reduced the amount of slope that had to be cut. So it's
exactly,
it's the entire footprint was reduced, not just the roadway.
So I exactly that it would be wide enough to play anything, but if you zoom in on the dimensions, Mike, do we know what is that?
Yeah, there's a gap there. Exactly. What is that gap? How big is that?
Yeah, you have a buffer in here from this 14-foot wide MUP over to your barrier. I don't have that dimension there, but I believe that's probably 6 feet or so, right in that
And
area.
that's what is it concrete? Is that soil? What is that? What are we looking at there?
No, that's asphalt right in there.
So that
The whole thing's
there's-
asphalt. Yeah.
Is it asphalt or is it dirt? There's
Asphalt.
6 feet. So zoom back in again. Please. So between the concrete barrier and that 14 feet, is this 6 more feet of asphalt?
Yeah, and then you got the noise wall over here, and there's another little buffer at this spot. Correct.
So do we have, say, instead of one side 6 feet, the other side 4 feet, we have 10 feet of asphalt that's not being used for anything other than this being asphalt?
More or less, yes.
Can we put the MUP up against the wall and then have 10 feet of area that we can plant, some trees and grass and shrubs?
I'll let you answer that, Nathan.
Yeah, we can look at that. And if that's something that you want to see as a planning area, I think there's a maintenance concern access is gonna be an issue there.
The
Yeah.
maintenance agreement on that would be what would have
For
to
the
be
city
worked out.
to evaluate.
But the access would be easy enough. You have a 14-foot paved area, so it can
That-
easily be accessed by a truck.
But that's as far as from the DOT's perspective, we don't have any issues there. And as far as what you plan there, you could coordinate that with the landscape contract. It's just there would be a municipal agreement required for the city to maintain that strip.
Why would it be?
Because we're not gonna be able to maintain that.
Why?
Any of we
I'm
don't
not
have the
really
man,
doing hardball. I'm just,
we don't have the manpower to do that and the contracting power to do that without budget. Have any of those that
so you've
we
already
do,
planned for any landscape maintenance in the project and any expansion of that.
any of that, there's a warrant for some maintenance, and then that gets turned over to municipalities.
And that'll be the same with that when the landscape contract is developed, whatever it is, what it will be anything that fits within DOT standard procedures for roadway maintenance, meaning we mow it 4 times a year with long arm standard equipment. We'll do.
But if we plant stuff, we can have the original contract include the first 4 years of maintenance, and as long as it's just something that just can be mowed or trimmed 4 times a year, then that does meet your requirement.
How long what are we talking about here? I mean, it kind of is what it is. It's a multi-use path and a wall, like the final run of the Death Star. And there's a creative idea.
Gotta love it.
And I look at I'm not obviously green space and would be great, but I also look at the future maintenance and then the idea of that potentially putting green space elements in there could degrade the utility of that facility, where I'd much rather be able to get like a plow truck in there and like a street sweeper, so that it's like safe and we can move people along through it and have dollars be spent somewhere else. I mean, it's
one of the main concerns from the very beginning was that we did not want a huge strip of concrete surrounded by high concrete walls on both sides, so that you feel like you're going through this big concrete. One of the issues was always that we wanted to keep this feeling that Asheville was a mountain town, a town in the woods, an artistic town, and just having 10 lanes of concrete and then having a concrete barrier and then more than 14 foot of asphalt with 6 and 10 feet of concrete on each side with a 16-foot concrete wall seems to be counter to that whole effort.
Well, can you pan to the left a little bit? Whoever's controlling.
And one of the agreements early on was that the state agreed that they would have a raised medium through most of this area, and we've way cut back on that. There was supposed to be a raised medium similar to what's in the section that goes into downtown from the mall area, and I've seen a lot less of that than was originally agreed upon 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Talking about the medium planners?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was something that was removed in O&R.
Right, and we've kind of given up on that, so I would expect that that type of additional landscaping would show up someplace else.
How long is this stretch that we're talking about where there's really no relief from the concrete on both sides?
It's really from where the ramp coming down from Haywood Road comes in, and the ramp from Patton. And so it's that space middle of between Haywood and
10 blocks.
I'm measuring it for you guys.
And where's the sound wall at?
About 2,000
Which-
foot.
Line is it? First one. Okay, so
So
between, so on the,
Appearance right there.
So the 14-foot MUP, and then there's asphalt on those simply function as a wider MUP.
It does. The MUP's asphalt too. So it's just that entire area is paved, which is something that we would typically do from a maintenance perspective, because we don't want to weed that. That
Our wheeled vehicles could
Sure.
really have a heyday in there. That would be a commuter potential because of the width of it. I don't see many people wanting to stroll there, walk there. The heat factor, the concrete, but
And actually, that's why it would make a more pleasant experience on the MUP path if they put the sound wall where the concrete barrier is and put the MUP on the other side of the sound wall so that they don't have to listen to the sound of the freeway as badly.
right,
there are places that it is the reverse of that the greenway is behind the sound wall. It kind of buried the space off the grade. I know from previous meetings, and maybe not from the committee here, but there has been some discussion of vagrancy concerns with that alternative, with it being cut off from view.
so to the right-hand side of the mouse where the noise wall comes away from the MUP, is that's landscape area? That's grass?
It's a, yeah, 2-1 slope.
Okay, so
I mean, it could be landscape, yes, but it is a slope. That's for the existing.
And that area will landscape with ideally trees and such, and you'll take care of that, but you won't take care of it at the next section over.
Yeah, well, those trees will be trees that you really won't have to do anything with up on that slope.
Uh-huh.
You have some that's within a path, like Mike was saying, that'll be constant maintenance to keep them from encroaching in on the path and becoming a mini jungle through there without regular maintenance, and that's such a tight area.
I thought you maintained it 4 times a year.
We have tractor mowers that have a side mower and a flail mower on the back that go through and mow the shoulders, and those would not be able to fit through there.
Get 20 feet.
What's that?
You get 20 feet.
Yeah,
14
and
plus.
you've got a 20-foot tractor with a mower
Oh,
with
yeah,
people
yeah,
trying to utilize that.
See y'all next week. Bye. I feel like we're straying a little bit past the bridge conversation.
Yeah, but I think NUT, I think DOT has gotten the message about what the committee's preference is with regard to providing more landscaping opportunities. Of course, within the constraints that need to be met, but. Okay, so back to noise abatement recommendations. I think it looks like the neighborhoods are pretty well protected with sound walls potentially. and and NCDOT has committed and hopefully is still committed to using best practices, noise reduction, pavement, except on bridges because of the grooved issues.
I think what was mentioned was, I think the concern there was noise underneath from the traffic
Mhm.
above. We can look at that and see. I know it was mentioned noise walls on the bridge. I don't know how well those would function. For underneath traffic, but it's something we could talk to our noise and air folks.
Okay.
So yeah, but I don't know how functional they would be. I'm more thinking if there's something underneath out there that we could look for. Meaning in between the bays of beams to muffle sound.
Okay.
You know, that may be just more investigation on our part.
Uh-huh.
Rather than particular estimation at this point.
Okay, so what have we not covered? It is. We have, okay, yep. So we will, landscape organizing principles will be on the agenda for the next meeting. And any further comments that need to be made this meeting?
I think just for our understanding, I know there'll be minutes, but can we just clarify the last bullet there, what requests you'd have for us to be looking at before next week as far as probable cost? I've been making notes. I can go through mine, but if you'd like me to do that. As far as what estimates we need to be trying to pull together between now and next Thursday. So we'll make sure we're not missing anything.
Yeah. You want to go through your notes?
I know we talked about, we want to, from a lighting perspective, we want to look at estimates for both pedestrian, pillared lights along the MUP under the bridge, as well as lights on the structure shining down. We'll look at those and so that you can value those together separately, however that goes. We did say we wanted to see a vertical abutment, so we'll look at that cost-wise, see what that change is. This is not a cost thing, but we will provide the committee the policy on land use agreement for the area of the 7 acres.
Okay.
Wherever it is under the bridge. Was there anything we need to look at for the cycle track, the extension of that? Do you want us to run forward with that?
I think it would be a good idea to scope that out, and just the feasibility of a continuous cycle track from the West Avenue Bridge to the Bowen Bridge.
That space in between.
Right, and then what kind of costs would we be looking at?
To make it continuous?
Yeah, to make it continuous.
Okay. The other one was from a bridge aesthetic standpoint, you wanted to see an estimate for, we determined we'll look at it from a feasibility standpoint, but piers, columns, barrier wall, wherever we can stick a form liner and what that estimate would be, along with some options for what form liners are.
Yeah, right.
The other thing I had was potential guardrail and barrier options for Patton in line with the other areas of the project. And then Councilman Maggie had mentioned LED lighting, how we can do some initial investigation into that.
Okay.
More aesthetic, like
Fiber optics
sure,
or something.
that may be. I don't know that we'll have an estimate for that next week, but we can look into some options.
So just to clarify, anything that we latch on to and want to propose has to come from this $400,000 savings. So
I think that's kind of the starting point of what's made available from our previous agreement. And then we would pursue alternate funding from both the department
okay.
or potentially the legislature, or whatever we could do kind of in that realm of what's available.
Okay.
I think the estimates will tell us what's feasible or not. And,
Right.
I don't want to speak for the city as far as funding, but I think our focus from a DOT standpoint is we'll take whatever estimates we have and look for all available funding options to us, and then whatever delta would be something that we discuss.
This is Mike. I have one question for about, if you're looking doing estimates, on Bowen Bridge, we've replaced the exterior railing along the pedestrian area, but we still have the unmatched railing on the interior along the traffic lanes. So right now it's the old railing that's still there. Is there a possibility that you could look at what type of railing that it could be replaced with that meets the standards for traffic?
We can share those estimates. That was an O&R change because the original bid proposal included replacing those.
You said 5 million.
That was our original estimate, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because of the historic nature of those bridges and the overhangs, you really have to rebuild about 8 to 10 foot of deck.
Just to replace the interior, the railing on those two spots? Wow.
That's right.
Yeah. It's integrated into the overhang, and you've really got to come back to the next thing.
I'm talking about the ones on the interior.
Correct.
Those are done on the, wow. Okay, well, never mind then.
Okay, so our next meeting is a week from today on the 29th of May, and meeting is